and welcome to the podcast Shedding Candlelight on Cryptids, Hauntings, Mythology, and more. If it is weird, we are talking about it. This is your host, Lee Donna. And no, Christmas in the year 2024 is not canceled. So everyone just calm down. You can celebrate in whatever way you wish with traditions new or old. The canceling of Christmas we are talking about today happened hundreds of years ago, complements of religious reforms sweeping across Europe. The Church of England, in a very basic, oversimplified history, is the byproduct of different religious cultures converging into one, cultures such as Celtic and Roman being among those. Unifying the religious practices of these cultures subjectively allowed for the alignment of values and morals in the countries adhering to the rules of the Church of England. But as always, there are problems when we try to force everyone into a box, even supposedly all-inclusive boxes. It is Henry VIII who is credited with creating the Church of England. He has a very cruel legacy of mistreating the women in his life. Many books and movies have been made about him, so you can go read or watch those if you want more information about his specifics. For it is of Henry's whims when it came to women that the Church of England was born. Henry VIII wanted to divorce his first wife so he could marry his pregnant mistress. At the time, England was under the religious rule of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, the Pope told Henry, no, absolutely not, because Catholics do not believe in divorce. Henry said, fine, be that way, because you know what? My country no longer adheres to the rules of the Catholic Church. And I denounce your authority over us because we serve a brand new church, one I just made up. It is called the Church of England. And guess what? My new church is not ruled by a pope. No, the head of this new church is going to be, drum roll, please, the monarch, meaning the king or queen. In Henry VIII's case, Henry VIII. Convenient, right? Super clever as well, because the king breaking from the confines of the Roman Catholic Pope not only let Henry marry, divorce, and behead the women in his life, but it shifted a great deal of political and religious power. Enter everybody fighting about what the morals, values, and approved practices of the one true God are. You know, the one God everyone is worshiping, yet still managing to find ways to fight about. Yeah, that's the God. Well, Henry really stirred this pot up again when he formed the Church of England in the 1530s, with many of the church's beliefs and practices growing to align more with Protestants instead of Catholics, especially during the reign of Henry's young son, Edward VI. Edward died in 1553 at the age of 16. His half sister, Mary, then ascended the throne, and she wanted no part of the Protestants. She was loyal to the traditional Roman Catholic religion and began to persecute Protestants. Mary's short reign was succeeded by Elizabeth I in 1558. Elizabeth restored the Church of England, but no one is ever happy, so rinse and repeat, which brings us to the Puritans. The Puritans are Protestants, but Protestants who think Protestants are too Catholic. Stay with me because the Puritans are the ones who canceled Christmas. In the historical records, much to the chagrin of many, Christmas is a holiday created by the Catholics. Whether or not this was done with nefarious intent depends on who you are and what your belief structure is. But the fact of the matter remains that Christianity was born, meaning someone decided it was a thing, taught it to other people, and then those people grew in power, got their hands on armies, conquered countries, and overwrote the cultures they conquered with their own beliefs. To do this, to dismantle tradition and religion so that people will fall in line with the new ruling class, The incoming power, in this case, Christianity, hijacked the celebrations of the now conquered cultures. The Romans did this to the pagan people they conquered, and when the Catholics took over in Rome, this new Catholic religion infiltrated every Roman religious celebration until everyone forgot about those other gods of old and their previous reasons for holding seasonal celebrations at a certain time of year. Which brings us to the Roman celebration of Saturnalia. I'm not going to go in depth talking about this. I might cover it on a Patreon. I think it would be fun to tell the story to my husband and get his real time reactions because words that come to mind when talking about the celebration would be rowdy, deviant, debaucherous, and those are the nice words. Saturnalia was an ancient Roman free your soul kind of celebration held in honor of the god Saturn. This is when you let it all hang out, in some cases, quite literally, because all social norms were out the window. People went buck wild, even the Catholic priest, because you cannot stop people from having fun and celebrating. So if you can't beat them, you join them, all while telling them that the real reason we are all having so much debaucherous fun is because of your God, not theirs. On December the 25th, the Romans used to celebrate the birth of their sun god, and the Catholic Church changed this to be the birthday of Jesus, even though they openly acknowledge that this is not actually Jesus's birthday. It's just a good day to celebrate his birth because we need a reason to celebrate that is not in the name of that other guy and his birthday. I want to be clear that the Romans were not unique in their winter celebrations because the Romans were also a melting pot of conquered cultures. So as we move through time, we can see how all of these practices evolved into the belief structures we currently have in place around the world today. But going back to the Puritans, those Protestants who separated themselves from their own religion because the Protestants were not chaste enough for them, the Puritans wanted the Church of England to outlaw the Christmas celebration because it was tied to Roman Catholicism. Despite the rebranding of this wintertime Christmas celebration, making it about the birth of Christ, the religious people, whether they be Catholic, Protestant, or anything else, still allowed much of the traditional merriment that the Romans so enjoyed. People ate and drank in excess, lost some sense of their moral compass, and might have committed a few sinful acts, all in the name of celebrating a false birthday. It was shameful, and the Puritans wanted no part of it. In the 1583 publication, The Anatomy of Abuses, Philip Stubbs said no one was ignorant of the abuses committed during the Christmas celebration. He wrote as follows: more mischief is committed than in all the year besides. What masking and mumming, whereby robberies, whoredom, murder, and whatnot is committed. What dicing and carding, what banqueting and feasting is then used more than in all the year besides. The line about masking and mumming refers to masquerade parties and theater because the number of plays being performed increased significantly during the Christmas celebration season. And apparently, dear Philip and the Puritans were wholly against such festivities. And they were not alone in their unflattering opinions of Christmas. The Presbyterian Church of Scotland also discouraged anyone from observing the lights of Christmas. However, in 1618, the King of Scotland, James VI, demanded that Christmas be celebrated by and in the Church of Scotland. Very few people listened to him because by this point, many people in every major religion, even clergymen, disapproved of Christmas. In 1632, a man named William Prine wrote in a publication called the Historiomastics that Christmas was the worst of the festivals. His reasoning was that during the Christmas celebration, people devoted too much of their time to the theater, wherein they partook of amorous, mixed, voluptuous, unchristian, pagan dancing. He asked why the English nations could not manage to observe any festival, especially Christmas, without drinking, feasting, shouting, gambling, masquerading, and staging plays. He said people acted as if they were celebrating the fruits of Bacchus, the Roman equivalent of the Greek god of wine, madness, and ecstasy, Dionysus, not our most beloved Savior. He further said that if the Turks and infidels were to behold the extravagances of the English Christmas celebration, that they would think our Savior was a glutton, an epicure, a wine bibber, a devil, a friend of publicans and sinners. He said Christmas was nothing more than a rebrand of Saturnalia, and it should be more aptly named the Devil's Mass or Saturn's Mass, since that's the false god the Romans were celebrating anyway. Obviously, there was pushback against such claims. It seems most people agreed that they could curb a little of the debauchery, but they did not agree with canceling Christmas altogether. And no matter if the reason they were celebrating was valid or not, they saw no reason to stop throwing parties and hosting harmless plays. Sir Toby Belch chastised the opponents of Christmas, saying, "Dost thou think that because thou art virtuous, there shall be no more cakes and ale?" His answer came in 1642 when the performance of plays was banned during the Christmas holiday. This was a 12-day period from December the 25th to January 6th, which is the time frame depicted in the popular 12 Days of Christmas song, which none of us really know all the lyrics to. The ban on plays was mainly upheld in London since the 12 Days of Christmas was the height of London's theater season. Also, in big cities, people are crazy. I don't know why. It just happens when you get too many people crammed together all in one place. Because during this time, people traveling from more rural locations back to London were commenting on how this ban on Christmas really was not a thing anywhere else. People outside of the cities were shrugging off this pushed on them by the ruling religious class ideology, much to the dismay of the Scots. Even before their king demanded that the Presbyterian Church of Scotland celebrate Christmas, the virtuous Scots had a hard time enacting the ban they had placed on Christmas. They could not get people to stop taking the day off, the heathen among them insisting on singing carols, wearing masks, eating themselves sick, and playing football in the streets. This forced the General Assembly to set aside King James's order to celebrate Christmas and to bring their support to the English opposition of Christmas. In 1644, Christmas Day fell on the last Wednesday of December. In England, the last Wednesday of each month by law was a day to fast and seek penance. So Parliament found themselves in a sticky pudding kind of situation. Most of them were Puritans by this point, and they had been under pressure to abolish Christmas, which is why they made weak rules that no one outside of London seemed to care about, including the members of Parliament who also celebrated the holiday in secret while proclaiming from their platform that people should be ashamed of themselves. So it is 1644, and England's parliament is once again finding themselves under pressure because of the pesky calendar. It's time to put up or shut up. So they align themselves with the Scots and cancel Christmas. In 1645, they amended their cancellation, saying that all religious festivities were banned because Christmas had nothing to do with Christ, but that people could secularly celebrate. They could feast, party, and attend plays, so long as none of it contained religious themes. A friend of Sir John Oglander commented on what a fantastic reformation this was, saying that the church doors have all been shut and the doors of the taverns have all been opened. Still, the Puritans, with their hold on England and their seeming desire to rid the country of every decadence, continued to state that Christmas was a festival with no biblical justification. In 1647, they managed to enact another and stronger ban on Christmas. And for the next 13 years until 1660, people were not to celebrate in any form, religious or otherwise, unless instead of feasting and indulging in excess, they wanted to celebrate by fasting. My grandkitty was put on a diet recently, and the people in England took the news of fasting for Christmas about as well as the demon cat took the idea of being put on a diet. Riots broke out. Protesters decorated doors and windows with holly and ivy and even mistletoe. Crowds played football in the streets. Shops in the market closed in observance of Christmas despite the governmental orders for them to remain open. In fact, any shops that obeyed the government were overrun with rioters who then forced them to close. Prisoners were busted out of jail, people were killed, schools were bashed in, and 10,000 men made a decree that if they could not celebrate Christmas, then they would put their king back on the throne. After the riots, Parliament decided that the ringleaders should not be dealt with under martial law as their local authorities wanted, but that the men should be tried by a jury of their peers. However, a grand jury refused to indict the men twice, so the men were released back into their communities. In 1652, a book called The Vindication of Christmas was published. This book argued for Christmas and against Puritans. It said people had the right to celebrate their old English Christmas the way they always had, with feasting and apples roasting on the fire, while plowboys and maidservants danced. Others would gamble and play cards, and they would all sing carols while waiting to be visited by Father Christmas. This same year, an extremist made a plea to Parliament arguing that Christmas was not grounded in the scriptures, that the masses being held in churches on Christmas Day were anti-Christ masses. This celebration that had infiltrated the churches had nothing to do with religion, but hedonism, an excuse for people to make money and promote wickedness. Parliament agreed. They said that December the 25th should not be held as a holy day, nor should it be celebrated in any form. They further decreed that town criers would be set on the streets every year to remind people that Christmas Day must not be observed and that the shops in the market should all remain open. Bishop Dupa maintained the Church of England for Charles II, and in 1659 he compared the rural areas to those places such as London, where he said that worshiping God had been so severely prohibited in the city that some people had started to wonder if they should even suffer being a Christian any longer. In 1660, the masses made good on their previous threat. Charles II was restored to the throne, and back by popular demand was Christmas. The holiday brought joy and festivity back to England, though the overall celebration was slightly altered. A little less drunk and naked in the streets. By this time, because of the constant persecution of Christmas traditions of old, many families had set aside the more controversial aspects of their celebrations. Even some of the less extreme Puritans, those I presume who sided more with the Catholics, decided that a little theater and dancing never hurt anyone, so long as Christ was kept out of Christmas. They were also okay with the food and the gift giving, so long as children were not spoiled by such frivolity. Bishop Dupa made an observation of this point in 1655 when he said, though the religious part of this holy time is laid aside, yet the eating part is observed by the holiest of the brethren. But not all Puritans were down with this half in, half out mentality. They were Puritans after all. And those Presbyterian Scots, in 1659, a Scottish minister searched houses, making sure none of them dared to be cooking the traditional English Christmas goose. These two groups continued to preach that man had made the belly their god, that for the sake of their own gluttony, they would steal and rob their own father on Christmas, that they would pawn the clothes straight off their own backs just to buy a Christmas pie. But in 1660, with the king on the throne and Christmas back in all of its tame English glory, the once again persecuted Puritans just wanted to live where they could be free to ban everyone's fun. By this time, the Puritans had already been sailing for the British colonies and setting up shop in what would later become the United States. There were even those in the colonies who were more pure than the Puritans. No talking, no laughing, no joy, only work. I mean, you are invading a whole continent. You need to focus. There is no celebrating Christmas. In fact, Christmas was outlawed in Boston from 1659 to 1681. For those 22 years, anyone caught displaying the Christmas spirit was fined 5 shillings. In today's 2024 US currency, Google tells me that would be roughly between $100 and $150. You did not let that little light of yours shine in Boston. You could, however, go down the coast to a place like Jamestown, because the Puritans in Jamestown were a little less pure. Maybe they had a little more Catholic in them, or just, better air quality, because in the Jamestown settlement, where in 1607 the very first eggnog was made in the colonies, Captain John Smith wrote that Christmas was enjoyed by all and passed without incident. After the American Revolution, when the United States became a country in 1776, the Americans pretty much said, we do not want any part of English customs. We are not drinking tea and we are not celebrating Christmas, except we like presents and capitalism. So we are still not drinking tea and we are not calling our cookies biscuits. Our biscuits are big, buttery, flaky goodness that you put more butter on and some jam. Also, over here, we dip our cookies in milk, chocolate preferably. American born writer Washington Irving traveled to Europe in 1815. Later in 1819, he wrote a series of fictional stories about the celebration of Christmas as it would be in an English manor house. Irving called the customs ancient and portrayed the Christmas celebration how he wanted it to be, as a holiday of peace and joy, a warm-hearted time of year that brought people together no matter their wealth or social status. It is said that Irving did not attend any such celebration while in England, but that he did, in fact, invent traditions that are still held today by simply implying in his writing that the stories he told, while fictional, were based on ancient and true customs of the season. In the same time when Irving was writing, the newly formed America had this movement happening where people were becoming more in tune with their feelings and those of their children. They saw Christmas as a day when they could lavish gifts upon their children without being held in contempt for spoiling said children. I kind of think this had to come from some rebellion minded person who remembered the moderate Puritans in England saying we could be half in on this Christmas holiday so long as we did not spoil the children. Americans also liked the family centered day of peace that Irving portrayed in his writing. This is all common mindset after a war when people are trying to get back to some form of normalcy and therefore participate in things that soothe the soul. Therefore, Americans finally embraced the Christmas holiday, deciding it was indeed a holy day, a religious family holiday of peace and love, a time when everyone should eat, drink, and be merry while exchanging gifts. Leave it to us to take something from England and then totally change it and then completely dominate the space. So most people only know the American way as if it has actually always been like this. Americans even revived the custom of sending cards, though those promoting it thought it simply came from the English version of the Christmas celebration, when in fact that tradition can be traced all the way back through the Roman celebration of Saturnalia. Then we have the lighting of trees and leaving out treats for Santa, customs we can trace back to ancient pagan origins long before Rome was even Rome. In 1828, the American minister to Mexico brought a red and green plant from Mexico back to the States. His name was Joel Poinsett, and we now know the plant he brought home with him as the poinsettia. My husband buys me one of these every year because our anniversary is in December. So happy anniversary to my handsome husband of 27 years. In 1843, English author Charles Dickens published The Holiday Treat, A Christmas Carol, where he encouraged the ideas of charity and goodwill towards all. In only 5 days, the first printing of this work sold out, and it further built upon the powerful ideas Irving had already implanted, not only in the hearts of Americans, but the English as well. Feasting and worshiping were now tied together, and special church services with musical and theatrical performances became commonplace. Americans put Christ back in Christmas and highlighted giving to the poor during the holiday season. The United States declared Christmas a federal holiday in 1870, and 20 years later, in 1890, in a direct throwback to the time when the Puritan led English Parliament once ordered that anti Christmas town criers should line the London streets, the Salvation Army sent their first fleet of bell ringing Santas to the streets.
Ho, 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 ho!
America's reinvention of Christmas customs does not stop there. In 1931, construction workers started the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree tradition. And in 1939, Montgomery Ward Department Store hired a copywriter named Robert May to help them lure customers into their store. Robert did this by writing a little poem about the most famous reindeer of all. The Puritans of old may have wanted to avoid spoiling their children, but with Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer came a renewed sense of the magic of Christmas, the wonder of joy in the face of a child, and the twinkle of light in their big, happy eyes. The decadence, the overspending, people going into debt, fighting each other in the aisles of stores, trampling each other underfoot when incited by the promise of a deal only to be had on one Black Friday every year, eating ourselves into sugar comas, rushing from one party to the next, the paper cuts on our hands because we are judged both on the value of our gift and the way it is ornately wrapped. We do it all for the joy of the children at the most wonderful time of the year. No matter your reason for celebrating and the choices you make when it comes to the way you celebrate, I pray that you and your family find joy and peace within your hearts and within your part of the world this season. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and if you want to reach out to me, my email is leadonabooks@gmail.com. My website is leadonabooks.com, and I am running one of those stampede inducing sales right now. Paperbacks are 50% off when you use the promo code paperback50 at checkout. I do sign each and every book, and if you tell me the name of the person you are buying for, I will include a personal message just for them. Supplies are as limited as the quality of my voice right now, which it sounds like I'm getting ready to totally lose. So, whether or not your books will arrive by Christmas depends on when you order and if I have any left when you place that order. This 50% off of my paperbacks sale is going to stay in effect until December the 31st, 2024. So, you really don't have to knock anyone over on your way to grab your phone or laptop. Just casually make your way to where you have internet access, like and subscribe to the show, and then do not forget to use code paperback50 at checkout. And I will see you guys in 2025, hopefully with a voice that isn't going to totally end before I get to the final line of the show. I appreciate you. Bye.
Immortal Monsters.